So here is another video. In this video, we'll talk about generating input data in a table. We look for the sum of the values, the max values, the minimum value, and the average value in the table. So we go to the source code. Here, we'll create a new random number generator for the ages. So them R and A and D as new random. Then we'll assign the data grid view auto size column mode dot fill to the column modes. And as usual, use the false as to allow users to add rows to the table. So now then it will assign the data grid column, the first name, last name, and data grid column will add last name and will add age. And now we'll use the for loop. So here we'll loop 12 times to add sample row with generated ID. So here for I as integer 0 to 11, we'll add a row with a sample name and a random age between 20 to 64. So that's data grid view dot one rows dot add. So we'll add the first name and we'll use our variable I, that's random generated. We'll add the last name I, random generated. So that's the I, that's the integer. So 0 to 11. So first name I, so first name 1, let's say first name 1, last name 1, random age next. So that's 20 to 65. That's the range between the age gap. Then we'll convert it to strings. So the first method we'll be using here to calculate the sum of all the ages of the data. So we use the LINQ. That's the language integrated query. So to calculate the sum for the age column, we use text txt sum.text. So from row as data grid view, row in data grid view, rows where not string is null or empty, row cell 2, so that's the index of the cell, formatted value dot to string. So select convert dot to integer 32, that's the row dot cell, that's the second index of the cell, formatted value. Then we use the sum to string and now calculate for the maximum. So for the maximum, everything will be the same, but for the ending part, we use max. That's the is an already integrated I think variable, integrated variable that is used to calculate for the max for any given array of numbers. And here we'll calculate on the minimum, everything will be the same. So the max will change it to minimum, and for the average they also have average, so now everything will be the same and we'll change the minimum to average. So now so that's the first method of using how to computate the sum, max, mean, and average in a table. And we can also use the traditional for loop to manually calculate the same result. So here we declare the sum, the minimum, the max, and the average, and we allocate it with the numbers, that's initial. So now we use the for loop also to loop through each row in the grid by its index. So for I as integer 0 to data grid view row count minus 1, add the value of the age cell to the running total. So sum plus or equal to convert dot 2 int 32 data grid view 1 rows, and the I, that's the integer, the number, dot cell 2, that's the index of the cell, then the value. So for the very first row, initiate minimum and maximum with its value. So if I is equal to 0, then max is equal to convert dot to in 32 data grid rows I cells 2 value. If it's minimum, convert data grid row cells values. So we end the if. So now we'll go to another if. If the current row's age is greater than the current max, update max. So if max is less than convert dot to int 32, then max is equal to convert to int 32 data grid 1 row I cells 2 dot value. They will end the if. Then the next if we will use if the current row's age is less than the current minimum, update minimum. So if the minimum is greater, that's if minimum is greater, convert the value. Then if minimum is equal to tx 2 int 32 data grid view dot rows I dot cells index 2 value, will end the if. So now we calculate for the average after the loop has finished. So the average is equal to CDBL. That's an default this thing they use in VB to calculate for the average. So that's the sum over the data grid view rows count. And now we assign the sum to the text sum, the max to the max text box, the minimum to the minimum text box, the average to the average text. So now we run the code, and if you run the code, this is what we are seeing. So that it will give us the sum. That's the sum of the all the ages is 511, and the max is 64. So the this first name has the max age, so that's the greatest age or the highest age among all of them. And the minimum is 24. That's 20 days, the 24. So the average will be all of them over the total number of rows. So the average age of all these people is 42.58. So in the last episode, we are about to create a data table, and this data table will display a list of user data in a grid and then apply conditional formatting to the rows based on the number or the value of the given row. So we'll create a public table, we'll declare public table variable. Oh, sorry. We'll declare a table variable in the form load, and we'll add columns automatically, manually, and we'll add rows to it manually. And then now we'll assign the table to the data grid using the data grid view one dot data source equals table. Then here, so calling for how to if you want to apply a color to the rows based on their data, we just add rows color, and then we'll call the rows color again. So we'll use for loop here. So we'll loop through every row in the data grid to check the number, the value of that cell, and assign a color to it. So for I as integer 0 to the number of rows minus 1, that's the data rows, the table of the rows in the table minus 1. So here to get the integer value from the age column, that's the column index 3. So that's the cell 3, that's the index. So them var as integer c int data grid 1 view 1 dot rows I. So that's the imaginary number. Then the cell in which it's taken from, that's the index 3, then the value. So applying a conditional coloring. So if the number or the value in a row is less than 5, then data grid view 1 dot rows I dot default cell star dot back color should be equal to red. And if the value is equal to 0, it should have a time start, it should be blinking. And so if else, the value is greater than or equal to 5 and value is less than 10. So this one will give us the value ranging between 5 and 9, and we'll assign a color orange to that one. And else if value is greater than or equal to 10 and value is less than 14. So this will take the ages between 10 and 14 and we'll assign the color yellow to it. Else for all other ages 15 and above, the color should be light green. So here we'll assign the color light green to it. And here the time taker, so the duration at which it should blink. That one will use the for loop, will loop through every row in the grid. So for I as integer 0 to data grid view 1 count minus 1, get the age value for the current row, that's the index 3, that's the age row. So only act on rows where the age is 0. So this timer is going to act on rows, the rows, the values that are 0. So if value is equal to 0, then we'll create a blinking effect. That's if data grid row I dot default black is also color red, then it will change it to white. So data grid view 1 dot rows I dot default cell style dot color dot back color is equal to white. Else if data grid view 1 dot rows I default cell style dot back color is equal to white, then change it back to red. Data grid view 1 dot rows I dot default cell styles dot color back is equal to color dot red. So here we run the code and check how it will be displayed. And so here, as you can see, age 21 is green, age 5 is orange, 19 is green, 36 is green, and here we have 3 that's red, so that thing that's below 5, and for 0 it blinks white, so it changes from white and moves back to red. So that's the if condition, the last part we added. And we have 12, age 12, that's yellow, and 9 orange. Yeah, I think that's all. Thank you for watching.